Synchronicity. This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
Welcome to Synchronicity. My guest this week is Nick Lutsko. Musician Nick Lutsko. Funny guy Nick Lutsko. Cool individual Nick Lutsko. So you're going to enjoy that conversation. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff. If you're not familiar with his stuff, go check him out. He's on Spotify. He's probably best known for a lot of the work he's done with Super Deluxe, the now defunct Super Deluxe. I think, was it Turner who ended them? What's going on, Turner? Ted Turner, cool guy. Come on, what's going on, bud? But he, truthfully, there's something about his music. He's done really incredibly cool thing. If you haven't seen them, like Emo Trump, and then there's the Alex Jones Bon Iver thing. There's just a lot of really good kind of creative ideas, musical comedy, if you will. But I'm not someone who loves when a show goes into like the musical episode, and it's funny. I'm not super into that, but the way he, it's like Vic Berger-esque, but very musically proficient and technically well done. I mean, he gets into some of his methodologies about how he made some of these things, and it's pretty fucking awesome. And just like a very thoughtful dude. So yeah, man, we get into a lot of that. But if you haven't checked out his stuff, go do that. Go do yourself a favor. You can do it now, or you can do it afterwards. Let's say you're jogging or you're driving. You don't have a choice. Put something else on. Just go listen to it afterwards. I think you'll really enjoy it. So yeah, that's what this episode is. Don't have a lot to say up front. What I will say is this. Anyone else have a shitload of stuff going on right now? I feel like I went from pretty much, I got a second to breathe, and then immediately followed by like, holy shit, so many things going on. I wanted to mention something. I am not getting paid. This is not an ad. This is not a promote. It is a promotion, but it's a heartfelt one with nothing tied to it. I picked up a book by Juliana McCarthy called The Stars Within You, A Modern Guide to Astrology. And it's really, really, really good. I heard Juliana on Mara James's Unbroken Chain podcast, which I highly recommend you check out. It's on MindPod Network. She's awesome. The podcast is awesome. And something struck me about the way Juliana, fucking her name up probably, talked about astrology. And it's just, there's something about it that resonates very deeply. And I think it's also something that in her book, she's explaining this in a way that is introductory for those of us who really are maybe aware of astrology, but don't know a lot about it. But it's also deep enough that it keeps you going. And I like how she attaches myths to all of the signs. There's a lot of good stuff going on here. That's what I'm saying. And she mentions Jung in like the first 10 pages. There's nothing wrong with that. So go check that out. It just came out. The Stars Within You, A Modern Guide to Astrology. If you're like me and astrology seems to follow me wherever I go, and I'm not even seeking it out, this I have found to be a helpful companion. I have it in my hand right now. So go get that because it's good. That's it. This episode is brought to you by relaxing on the train. I highly recommend, if you're able to do it, if you live in an area and a train is accessible. Trains are everywhere. I listen to Rockefeller and all these other barons who dominated the train industries, and Carnegie and all these people, Commodore Vanderbilt, all this stuff. There's trains everywhere. Go on a train, put on some headphones, look out the window at your beautiful landscape. It's the best thing. I highly recommend it. So go. Thank you to Relaxing on a Train for being a new sponsor. Very much appreciate that. A reminder, if you want to support the show, tell a friend. That's all. It's something I can't measure. Not really measuring too much these days related to the podcast. It was going well last I measured. I'm going to assume it's going well based on the feedback that I'm getting. But go tell a friend if you like it and think it'd be good for them. So that's it for this intro. Nick, you're going to love this episode, truthfully, because He's just a really cool guy. This is someone I'd put in like the realm. We talk about it specifically, kind of how we got to start. But if you're a fan of Vic Berger, if you like really well done music stuff, that is just fucking awesome, and you like creative people, you're gonna love this episode. So that is it. And without further ado, here is Nick. Let's go.
Hey, what's up, Noah?
Nick, what's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I'm doing great.
That's awesome.
Enjoying this Tuesday morning.
Yeah, it's nice. Is it nice where you are? You're in Tennessee?
No, it's not nice. Yes, I'm in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and it's not rainy, but it's overcast. It's like almost rainy, like drizzly, I guess.
What's the temperature though?
40s is my guess.
Yeah, it's 30s and rainy here. It's just kind of one of those days, I guess, on the East Coast. Who knows?
Yeah, you're in New York?
Yeah, I'm in upstate New York. I'm like an hour and a half north of the city.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Cool, man. Thanks for coming on and doing this.
Definitely.
I'm a big fan of your music, not only the stuff you've done for Super Deluxe, but you're pretty damn good, man.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm ready to get started. You good to go?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. So yeah, I wanted to get some background. I did, what's really cool about when you YouTube is that PBS documentary that comes up on Chattanooga artists. That's like it's PBS is so cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like the local Chattanooga affiliate. Thing. Yeah.
So I found out, I got some insight into what you're doing and the puppet stuff and all of this, but I found out that you went to music school to be a songwriter, and I love that you said that you learned exactly how not to write a song. I went to Berkeley, so I kind of know exactly what you're talking about, but I'd love to hear, like, how did you get into being, a pretty prolific artist in terms of getting your stuff out there and having a vision and doing that? How did that evolve from like when you were younger to where you are now?
Yeah, man. Well, I was in bands through like, pretty much always. I mean, they weren't like, I started playing music in 5th grade and had like garage bands, through like middle school. And I had my first real band in high school. And I think since I started so young, we kind of had like an edge over all. I feel like a lot of people get into music like around high school age.
Yeah.
And since I'd already kind of been doing it a little while, the band that I was playing with, we were able to get pretty decent gigs for our hometown. Like we have like a yearly River Bend festival, and we got on that. All the little like local music series we got on pretty easily and had a lot of attention just because of our age. And I think it really warped my mentality of like how music works, because we were so young and it was almost like a novelty in a way. And I just kind of thought like, you write songs, you play shows, and people show up, and this is just how it goes. And, as each year we got older, we got better, but people paid less and less attention. And then eventually it got to the point where I was in college, and I went to school for commercial songwriting at MTSU. And I graduated. I didn't really pursue music in college at all. And I think I just kind of like was sitting around and waiting for someone to like discover me or something. And I realized like, if this is something I'm going to do, I'm going to have to work really hard at it, because I had no prospects. And I realized pretty quickly that songwriting isn't something that you can show someone a piece of paper and be like, hey, look, I got a degree. They want to see what you've done. And so it was around that time that like I moved back with my parents when I graduated, and since I wasn't, paying rent, I just utilized that time just to put every cent I had into trying to develop a brand and get a band going. And Yeah, man. Sorry, I know I'm kind of just like giving you the whole.
No,
There's a
I
lot of
love
ground to
it,
cover.
dude. This is like, listen, I just so you know, I went to a music college with. It attracts a similar type of person. I feel like because on one level, it's like we've chosen to pursue music as a theoretical career, which we quickly find out when you graduate is like, oh, that's not something that is a thing. Like
Right.
you
Yeah.
can move to a city and like try to get in with the creative scene or like something somewhat related to what you're doing, but I mean, it's not like you've decided to become a doctor or a lawyer
Right.
or work at like a corporate job or whatever it is. So, I mean, it attracts a certain type of person who kind of on one hand knows that maybe this isn't the most practical of things or just generally doesn't have an awareness of that, which is probably more of us, but also shows some acknowledgement that like I'm going to college, like I'm getting a degree, I have to take classes, and if you graduate it proves some type of commitment. So I totally get, and like it's not rambling at all, man. Like I think it's really cool to put it in context because like a lot of people listening are creative people. I know that from listeners of the show. And, they're on various ranges on the spectrum of like, successful artists. And to me, you already hit on what a successful artist is, which is it's someone who just decided like, I got to take this seriously. Like I'm going to work at this because I care about it.
Right.
And that's truthfully the definition of successful artist. I mean, dude, how many talented people did we go to school with where it's like those people should be way more popular and way more successful, but like, talent isn't the only thing that drives it. So I think it's really important that you cover this stuff, man. Not at all. You're not rambling at all.
Cool. Yeah, and I do think that's probably the biggest thing that people need to recognize. Like that's the light bulb that needs to go off. Is like this is more than just writing songs and performing. And it sucks because a lot of creative people usually aren't good at developing themselves as a business or
Yeah.
like so. But I think recognizing that is really the obviously there are other situations and luck and who and stuff like that. But a big part of it is just trying to be everywhere at once,
Yeah.
and that means just playing the right shows, putting your stuff online. Uh, I don't know.
Well, I mean, you got lucky and you didn't. Like one of the reasons I got to know Vic, who I know you're associated with, and Tim Heidecker, which is kind of like how your, success story started there in terms of mainstream attention. Like I just saw one day that Tim Heidecker retweeted like years ago something by Vic that I thought was like the funniest thing I had ever heard or watched. It was just hilarious. It was like one of Vic's really early videos. And I was like, oh my God, this dude has no followers, no attention, and he's like amazing. So you did that too. Didn't you do it with like something with On Cinema? Like you did, was it that or was it the election special?
It was the election
Yeah,
special.
tell that story.
Yeah, so basically I was doing I was pursuing my own music thing full time pretty much. And this is kind of like a rabbit trail, but I've been with my now wife for close to 10 years.
Oh,
We
congrats.
started
That's
dating
awesome.
thanks. Yeah. Started dating like right towards the end of high school. And when I graduated college, I kind of had like a 3-year spell where I just went really hard into pursuing, my original music and performing and developing the live show and putting out records and all that stuff. And it was on a great trajectory and everything was really going well. But I was kind of getting to the point where it was like all the money I make goes back into making what I'm doing better. Like it wasn't a sustainable. Like I wasn't.
Yeah.
I was making no income. Like, and it was kind of the point where it was like, like I'm ready to get married and start a life, and
Yeah.
but I like need to figure out a way to monetize this. And it's I was doing that by booking more like the typical like restaurant gigs and like brunches and where you're playing cover songs and stuff
Totally.
like that.
I've done
But
it.
I was really trying to figure out like how to like and I was following Tim and Vic's election special at the time. They're doing a lot of like Facebook Live and Snapchat stories and stuff, and it was just hilarious and a lot of fun. And I was sitting in my bed, and I just was like playing bass and had this Vic and Tim at the Republican convention little single pop in my head, and I was like, oh man, I really want to record this and send it to them. But at the same time, I had this really guilty feeling. I was like, but I can't tell my, at the time, girlfriend, fiance, I don't remember what she was at the time. I was like, because this isn't productive. And I stayed up all night recording that song, and I like scoured the internet for these Alex Jones clips that make up some of the vocals as well. And I finished it and tweeted at him, and kind of felt dumb about it, thinking like, oh, they'll probably never listen to this, and I could have been spending my time actually like figuring out how to like make some money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then ironically, that ended up being the catalyst for all of my work at Super Deluxe. Long story short, because Tim retweeted it the next morning, said he really liked it, and then later that evening, someone from Absolutely Productions reached out and asked if they could use it as the official theme song for the special, and I wrote a DNC. They did the RNC first, and then I wrote the song for the DNC as well. And then from there, the Super Deluxe guys who were producing the special reached out and said, I think they needed like me to sign some stuff to give them over, let them use it or whatever. And I just let them know like, I write songs. Like this is what I want to do for a living. I would love to contribute anyway if you guys ever need anything else. And then I think we bounced off ideas for a few weeks or maybe a couple months, and then eventually my producer Super Deluxe had the idea for the first emo Trump video, and that did really well, and really it just kind of snowballed from there. And
yeah, and we'll talk about some of the other stuff you did too, but I do want to zoom in on. I love that the mindset at the time, and like who hasn't been there? I've been there recently where you're like, oh fuck, I gotta make money. I gotta be practical. I gotta be productive.
Right.
Is the word you use? Productive, right?
Yeah.
And while you're doing this, probably just to decompress what we're all doing, we're watching the election special because it's just hilarious. If anyone didn't get a chance to see it, and you have a jingle in your head, like I mean, if you're plugged into the stuff that just comes and you can't stop it, you do those little funny songs all the time. And you just pursued it. And there's no real good reason to be doing it in a practical sense. It's not really going to be leading to anything, even if you have the kernel of the thought that it could lead to something. Like you said, you felt like weird when you tweeted it out at them. And that feeling is one of my like favorite feelings, because to me, I've learned over the years, like when you send something out or you pass something on creative that you've done and you feel like vulnerable and exposed, more often than not, unless it kind of sucks, more often than not, like it comes back and you're like, holy shit, that got like a really cool thing just happened there. So that I love when that happens, man. That's fucking awesome.
For sure. That's one thing is I've really like I learned a lot from that specific experience to like lean into those moments, and like if like worst case scenario you don't hear anything back, and then you do it again, and then maybe next time, like there's not really a downside. I don't know. I
Exactly.
feel like those kind of instinctual spurts of inspiration are like some of the most important to like really explore and see where you can go with it.
Yeah, because you're not trying to do anything. You know what I mean? It's not like you sat down, like, this as a songwriter or as anyone's put out any type of creative work. The second that you become like meta aware of trying to create something, it's like that's when, the solo isn't as good as it could have been. That's when like it gets a little clouded by kind of this observational role. Whereas if you're just pursuing like the fun, hilarious shit. And I feel like that's why, Tim Heidecker is a good vessel and kind of like amplifier of this stuff, because I feel like that's where a lot of it comes from. It's just like pure, like this shit is funny. This is just works. This is a cool creative outburst. So yeah, it's really important to remember that. I mean, it always is this, like it's an interplay of balancing that kind of like impracticality with also like somewhat of a realization that like, yeah, like I live in the world, I'm married, I got to do stuff, so it's interesting. I mean, I want to get into your videos and all the things you've done, the creative aspects of it, but I'm also curious to hear kind of what your thoughts are now that Super Deluxe kind of went belly up, which was like a huge shock. I think Vic had mentioned to me a little before, I think, but like he was as surprised as anyone. Like what happened there, and like are there pieces being picked up by any people who are involved? What's your sense of kind of what's going on?
Yeah, I don't know, man. So I was a freelance contributor. So I'm here in Chattanooga. They're based out of LA. So I was about as on the outskirts as anybody. And I learned probably the same way you did. I saw someone tweeting about it, and that's why I started it.
It's fucking crazy.
Yeah, man, and it's it's been tough. I don't really have any more info than anywhere else. I've heard whispers of some people affiliated maybe starting other things up. I don't know how much crossover there will be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I wish I did have a little more info, but it's just wild. It's because it even though I was a freelance contributor, it was my main, like, I kind of toward the end there, I was doing bi-weekly videos.
Yeah, I
So
was
it
gonna
was
say you're prolific. Like I think a lot of people probably associate you with the videos that you've done for Super Deluxe. You know what I mean? It's like,
right. Yeah, it was definitely towards the end. It was like my full-time thing.
yeah,
So and it's a tricky spot because musical comedy is not something that I ever pursued in any real way until it fell into my lap.
right.
And I got to the point where I felt like, really confident and passionate about the work I was doing. And I would like to continue doing it, but now I'm in the position where it's like, okay, do I lean into this and try to find
Yeah.
another outlet and really lean into this thing that I never really set out to be, or do I kind of take a step back? And I don't know. It's been an interesting time to try to figure out, what the next move is.
Where are you in that process?
I mean, for a money standpoint, I would love. I mean, I really do enjoy creating the types of videos that I was doing for Super Deluxe.
Yeah.
Financial reasons are the biggest ones that are pointing me in that direction right now, just because like that's literally how I was making a living.
Yeah.
But I mean, I never stopped working on original stuff. I have a new album that's like 80% done that'll be releasing
awesome.
early next year. Yeah, I'm really excited about that as well. But yeah, I don't know, man. I've been trying to. I've released a few like little shorter videos, like just on Twitter and stuff, and I've been thinking
Like
about
the
starting.
Pikachu thing.
Yeah, no, that was actually. That's another thing I've been doing is I've been going back and just kind of highlighting things I did. That was one of the first things I did for Super Deluxe. That
It's
was
fun.
a dog filter song. Yeah. But yeah, over the years, there's been a lot of stuff that was like either got shelved or just kind of slipped through the cracks, and I've been trying to like either revamp some of that stuff or I don't know. I know Vic's been kind of doing similar stuff with his YouTube channel, but a lot of stuff slipped through the cracks, and I'm hoping to kind of use that until I find another outlet to push this stuff out.
Well, I mean, I'm happy to hear that you have an album almost completed and you're still working on that, because I just found like even if something falls into your lap that, and like, just to be clear, this is not the same thing as like a corporate job fell in my lap and I'm just going to ride that money train. Like, it's clear and evident that not only do you enjoy making the comedy music stuff, like the Trump stuff and the Alex Jones stuff, but it's also genuinely you're good at it. You know what I mean? So that's something that I think is evident to a lot of people who have seen these. And yeah, man, like my hunch is, I had this hunch with Vic before, like, truthfully, like anyone was had any type of exposure to him at all. It was like me and like 30 people following him. Like, dude, like I guarantee this is going to be something that you can do. Like, I don't know the permutation. No one knew that Super Deluxe or Tim or anyone would associate with him to that degree. But like, I'm telling you, man, like your stuff is a cut above of not only just the stuff that, is out there, but just like the general kind of like internet fodder that people, put out every day. And I think enough people have exposure to you at this point that, I think you're going to, my hunch is you're definitely going to be able to do, and some veins will open up for you and some lanes will open up for you in the future, dude, because it's good shit, man. It really is.
Yeah. Thanks, dude. Yeah. It's a tricky spot because Super Deluxe really, I can't think of anyone else who was doing what they were doing, and they appeared to be doing it well. So for them to have,
yeah, it was weird.
Right. Yeah. So it's just, yeah. I also remain optimistic that something will come along.
Yeah. I mean, you have exposure now. Well, so let's talk about some of the videos and kind of not only conceptually how you do them, but also technically. One of my favorites is the Alex Jones Bonnie for one. It's just incredible. So how do you go about, do you source the material before writing the song? Do you have melodies? Like, I'm curious your actual process for this stuff.
Yeah, man, it's pretty convoluted, really.
Perfect. I love it.
With that Alex Jones one, it's funny because I actually pitched it as doing and I'm so glad we ended up doing it the way we did, but I originally pitched like a Alex Jones metal song. And we kind of realized, like, we'd gone back and forth on it, and we realized that it would be funnier to take some kind of like sweet, somber, melodic song and place his, like
insane,
absurd,
yeah,
yes, rants, and like just the juxtaposition would work way better. And so we decided on Bon Iver, and yeah, man, it basically consisted of me just watching way too much Alex Jones videos is definitely the worst part. And surprisingly, it's the most time consuming. Usually, it would take like 3 to 4 days, just full days of just like watching clips. Well, keep in mind also, I've gotten way more efficient at this stuff. When I first started, I was not a video editor, and I took some classes in high school on Adobe, but all I had on my computer was iMovie. So I was working in iMovie. The other thing I didn't know how to do is how to like isolate. If I needed 5 seconds of a clip,
Right.
I didn't know how. Now it's like the easiest thing in the world, but at the time, say if I'm working on like emo Trump and there's a 5 second clip I want from one of his speeches, a lot of the time I'd be downloading 2 hour clips and just for a 5 second snippet.
Oh shit.
Yeah, import all of that into iMovie. And then,
Holy crap.
it's also like a 10-year-old version of iMovie that like is so counterintuitive, and like everything took way longer than it needed to take.
That's crazy.
But anyways, back to the process. I would just kind of scour the internet and try to find these clips, and I would write down all the best lines, and then I would basically try to form some kind of narrative, like while also finding like a rhythmic like sense of rhyme scheme, or I don't know. Depending on the song, like sometimes it'd be more rhyme heavy, or sometimes it'd be like what message are we trying to send, and how
right,
like,
thematic and content wise, right.
Yeah. So that takes a while. Like most of the time, I would probably have like after I would do all my research, I'd have like 6 to 7 sheets of paper. I'd print them off and just lay them all over the floor like a madman with a highlighter, and try to like connect the dots and figure out which lines kind of make sense together, and what would work as a hook, and what would work better for a chorus, and that usually took a while. And then once I got to there, I would record like a scratch track, like demo basically, but to a click. So like it's all like in place, like it's where it needs to be.
Right. You're not screwing yourself later having to go and figure out the tempo and figure
right.
out.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel you.
And then from there, I would take that, and then I would take all the clips that I had downloaded, and I would match them to the words I was singing, and I would speed up or slow down the video to match, exactly.
Right.
And then from there, I would go back to the song and I would produce it. And that was it was really cool. Super Deluxe had like a really strict legal team that didn't want, for some reason, they didn't want to do any straight parody like Weird Al type stuff, where it's like the same melody, same, instrumentation. I mean, I'm not an expert or anything, but I think they were being like overly worried there, because
parody falls under fair use. Yeah, for sure.
So I don't know why, but I liked it. I don't complain too much, because there was more of a creative fulfillment from it. It was more sound alike stuff. So it was like challenging myself to like get into the head of this artist and write a song through this artist as a vessel, using the words of some insane person. So it was a really cool. So like for that Bon Iver song, like there's actually a lot of really cool articles about that record that Bon Iver did for Emma forever ago, about what he used to record it. So I used like all the same microphones and like the same positioning of microphones.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
And yeah, so like I really like that aspect of some songs I got more into or not. Sometimes I just kind of had a hunch and I just lean into it, and then other times I do more research, and I usually find like 1 or 2 songs that I really wanted to emulate, and I would just study like how different instruments are panned, the tone, I would just get really deep in the weeds on that kind of thing. And then I'd spend time producing the track, and then basically by the time I finished the track, I'd plug it into the video, and from there I would send it to Super Deluxe. And then Super Deluxe had a designer, Jesse Benjamin, who did all my videos, who would add the lyrics and any kind of filter animation. And that's pretty much the lifespan of one of those songs.
Well, what's cool about it, man, that's really awesome. What's cool about it is like I'm not totally surprised to hear the attention to detail in terms of the recording and everything, but like I don't think people realize like that it's not a super easy thing to replicate, like a style. Like you're nailing this shit, you know what I mean? Like it's like truthfully, like, and I that's why I reached out too. Like I've not only is this stuff, the juxtaposition of the Alex Jones, it's hilarious, but like there's real creative, like it shines through the overall project. You know what I mean? Like it's very clear. And I think that's fucking awesome. Man. You're looking at miking techniques. It's so cool.
Thanks, dude.
So I mean, like what are some of your like favorite? I know you probably are pretty eclectic. I can just tell from who you are and just kind of what you're able to cover. But like, who are some of your biggest musical influences that kind of got you on the track and that you still kind of like hold special, close to your heart these days?
Man, that's pretty tricky. I feel like I'm always kind of going in and out of different artists, but I think some of the ones that like haven't changed at all are like the Beatles, and I know that's kind of like a very obvious answer, but they're I got into them like early high school, and like Bob Dylan, Paul Simon, Neil Young, those guys. I feel like more recently I've gotten into more eclectic stuff like Tom Waits and Ween.
Love Ween.
Yeah, they're one of my favorites.
Oh man, the Mollusk is such a good. Oh, it's so good.
Yeah, they have so many great albums.
Yeah, so many.
I've always really been into Primus. I got really into them in high school.
Nice.
Seen them a bunch of times. Oh man, I could talk about music.
I know, man. I know. We could quickly just go and devolve into just a very nerdy musical discussion, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Dude, so there's another thing that struck me that prompted me to reach out, and it was a tweet of yours where you were talking about when recently Alex Jones dressed up like a frog and did this whole ridiculous, like even for Alex Jones standards, like over the top for Alex Jones. If anyone could imagine what that would look like, that's what it was. But your take on it, I thought was really insightful because I think you saw through the kind of obviously it's the shtick to some extent. He's obviously like mentally deranged as well, but like you pointed out, like this is not something that really needs our attention. This isn't something that's adding any value, and either chastising or encouraging it is not something that I think is that important. I'm obviously paraphrasing a tweet, that shitty tweet, but what's your kind of take? I mean, like what are your leanings for the stuff like this? Because obviously, like Super Deluxe, because of Vic, inadvertently kind of inserted themselves into this alt-right discussion because some of the content of Vic's videos, like where do you fall on kind of like all of this stuff that's going on?
Well, I feel like, I mean, so many things, especially now, like deserve to be chastised. I think that video in particular, it just seems so obvious to me. Like it just seemed very desperate. Like he was placing the bait and he wanted people to take it. Like he knew that everyone made such a big deal about his gay frog rant. And it's just funny because right now he's not in the public eye nearly as much as he was. He's banned from almost every platform. It almost just seems like a desperate plea of like, talk about me, talk about me, talk about me. And it's like, it didn't seem, with the original Gay Frogs rant, at least seemed like he believed what he was talking about. And this is like, I don't know, it just really felt like, I just felt disappointed in seeing so many people like, oh my God, look what Alex Jones is doing.
Right.
But he's wanting you to do this. Like, and it's just, I don't know. It just couldn't have felt more obvious to me. So, I mean, that wasn't so much a statement or blanket statement on giving or not giving attention to these psychopaths. But I do think probably it would be good to take some of my own medicine and apply that to some other dudes. I find myself getting mad at almost everything Mike Cernovich posts and having some stupid response to everything he says. And I don't think that really contributes too much.
Yeah, it's there's this weird point. Like there's one thing I've learned from being on Twitter for a really long time at this point. It's like you have to be very careful with who you're willingly subjecting yourself to. And obviously, if you have, a core group of people you're following and they're in a certain political or cultural perspective, you're going to see stuff that maybe you didn't sign up for. But that said, like, I remember it was very clear for me one time. It was someone who's like a friend of a friend, and every tweet he made it just made me so mad. And I realized like I more often than not, I tweet something back and I'm like, holy shit, I'm the asshole. I was like, I just figured it out. Like, I'm the asshole. Like, I am the one who's perpetuating this. Like, he's going to do this no matter what. Why am I engaging? There obviously, though, is a balance between being kind of like, okay, I don't want to engage with these people. But then when it comes to people who are on the alt-right, who are just like blatant Nazis and doing terrible things, like, you also have to be like, yo, this is bullshit. Which is why I'm grateful for people like Vic and Tim and other people who like call it out in a funny enough way where it's not like you're giving it its kind of the credit it deserves. You know what I mean? Like this is ridiculous.
Right.
Not that like, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, so like where politically, I'm not asking you politically where you stand so much, but how do you deal with, I mean, this is just a relevant question for everyone. Like, how do you deal with kind of what's going on culturally everywhere, it seems, in terms of like you spoke about it with Alex Jones. I mean, oftentimes I think, people like Trump and stuff like that say these things just to do exactly what you said. Like they're putting on their gay frog suit and hopping around, whether it's actually a gay frog suit or not. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
how do you deal with this shit? Because you seem like, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you seem like a pretty creative, in touch with the maybe more esoteric aspects of reality that you can kind of tune out. But I imagine, you get subjected to it like all of us. Like, how do you process all this stuff?
Yeah, man. I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, not well. I guess is the right answer. Before Trump, for whatever reason, I just wasn't very politically engaged, and I still, to a lot of extents, consider myself pretty middle of the road. Like, I'm not really black and white on a ton of things. I think.
Yeah,
I mean, other than like obvious like social issues, but like I think most things, I feel like there's a lot of gray area that some people like reduce into like this is the one true way and this is the one true way.
totally.
But I mean, obviously, to me at least, Trump is just like in a whole other world of just like corruption and like uh, immorality, and it just I'm not the best at articulating it, but I'm baffled by how the GOP has just towed the line.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I just wish there was like a real, especially being like the party of evangelicals, and
Totally.
it's just something that I just can't wrap my head around. It just drives me crazy. Also, especially living in the Bible Belt and having so many people here that I love and respect jump
Right.
on his agenda and toe the line, it just kind of makes me sick.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because, my wife has a lot of family from Houston. And not only are they from Houston, but they're also Jewish and they're huge, by and large, Trump supporters. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, what? Like, so I can only imagine living where you live, which is not a blue state. It's not particularly liberal and progressive in most people's minds, although there obviously are enclaves of people like that everywhere. But
Right.
it must be weird and relatively disconcerting. And like, I try to look at this stuff not just from a political standpoint, because that we can easily fall into the trap of exactly like you're saying, it's a binary choice, good, bad, yes, no, which is like very few things are like that unless it's like, oh, don't murder people. It's
Yeah.
weird when like one of those kind of ideologies can drift into like, oh, like let's not put children in cages, and they're like, no, I think maybe that's okay. And it's
Right.
like, holy shit. Like, so I try to look at it from like just like a perspective type of view rather than a political one. Like, what is it like? Like, what is your sense? Because I'm sure you know people who are Trump supporters. And like, just to be clear, if anyone, I know there are actually a few people who like Trump who listen to this podcast. Like, I don't shit on Trump supporters as a general group because that's ridiculous. Like it's also ignorant. Like you're not understanding circumstances and where people come from, whether
Right.
it's sound or not. Like how do you kind of reconcile that with people kind of, because you seem like pretty attuned to like, yeah, like maybe some things are morally flexible or like fiscally flexible and strategy flexible, but like certain things like no, that's not okay. How do you kind of deal with that shit though?
I don't know, man. I feel like the one thing that really like I feel like I can have a conversation with anyone who is like, I think Trump's an idiot. I don't know if he's the best leader, but I believe in X and Y, and he's doing that, and I like him for that. Rather than folks who just blindly are like, Trump is bringing back Christmas, and he's a man. We got a man of God in the White. You know what I mean? Like it's two different realities. It's like we at least have common ground where like we're seeing reality, and like from your viewpoint, he's doing things that you feel like are making the country better, rather than just turning a blind eye to like the constant lying and
Right.
like I don't know if that really even addresses what you were asking.
No, it does, and it's actually more of what I was asking. I was had a shitty way of phrasing it. It's kind of like a reality breakdown, right? And I think
Right.
that's what everyone is kind of struggling with right now. Like it's framed because of the media and other people just kind of, this is how we've naturally looked at things through the lens of culture, which is like this is a good thing to do. This is something we do. This is something we don't do. That seems to be breaking down and getting to your point that like a lot of people who are in the GOP are either tacitly or overtly condoning this shit. And that's
Right.
crazy. So for a lot of us, no matter where you fall, and what you're saying makes total sense. If there's someone who has like cogent responses based on issues, or maybe they're not even that well thought out, but there's some proof that they're
Right.
saying like this is better, at least you can kind of understand, even if you don't agree. But for
Right.
someone who's just convinced, like bullheadedly stubborn, they're just biting the propaganda hook, full hook, line, and sinker. Like that is a very scary thing to kind of process. To me, this is kind of how I look at all this shit. Just as so because I'm weirdly very optimistic, even though it's clear to see the horror that's being inflicted on people's psyches every single day.
Yeah.
Is that I think this is a very clear example of people seeing some people for the first time that like shit isn't ever the way we thought it was. We were being presented an image of something that enough people kind of collectively were deluded enough to believe in. It never really worked for everyone. Like this society Western society is built on the backs of like horrible things that most people are much more comfortable not acknowledging. And that always comes back to bite you. It's like, this from a creative person. Whenever you're writing a song and like you feel it, like that there's a deep kind of like soulful connection to what you're pulling from or what you're tapped into, that's a palpable feeling. And if you turn away from that or you kind of don't pursue it, you're going to kind of get a modified weird version of something. So trying to stay in tune with that like soulful thing is very important. And basically what's going on here is collectively everyone's kind of got to face their individual and cultural shadows. And that's not what's happening. It's easier for us to say, hey, it's someone else's problem. It's Trump's problem. He's the only piece of shit that's ever done. And we've all done Trump-like stuff, probably not to the degree he does it, but we've all done shitty things at one point in our lives. And I think people's inability to kind of focus and recognize that is really kind of just like blowing up our whole image of what life is supposed to be, especially in this country. And I think everyone, that's why like I like to ask the question, like, how are you processing and dealing with it? And like, dude, 90% of people are like, not well. Like, I'm not. It's like, because no one has been taught to how to process any of this shit. So it's very, very weird times. But yeah, man, like, I always like to ask creative people kind of how they process this stuff, because I find the ones who are, maybe not totally politically engaged still feel this stuff pretty heavily. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. It is. It's interesting too, because I didn't do like my first project in the line of work that I ended up pursuing was the election special for Vic and Tim.
Right.
And since then, I've been consistently like that. Like I'm hanging on every word he says because I'm thinking like, okay, how can I turn this into some content or whatever? And I wonder. I mean, I still think it would drive me just as insane as it does now, but I don't know if I'd be this like neurotic of effort. I don't know. I don't know if I'd be in a better place.
Well, it's
mentally
interesting.
if I wasn't having to like be so
tuned
in
in.
sync with it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, man. That's I spoke to Vic about this briefly because I got to know Vic before he was known. He didn't do any political. So it was like chubby checker videos and like just like silly little things that were like nothing to do with politics. But it's weird that, when you're doing things like emo Trump, like you do kind of have to be tuned into the ridiculousness of what he's saying. And like, truthfully, it's like drinking poison. You know what I mean? To make something funny. It's like, how do I drink just enough of this to pull out the funny thing that's going to make people feel better about it without like killing myself by drinking too much of the poison? That's really, really interesting. I never thought about that. I mean, I talked about it with Vic briefly, but I also didn't think about that you started kind of this pivot to musical comedy from the election special. It's a weird.
I never really thought of it either till you just pointed it out.
Yeah, it's a weird time. It's a weird time, man. So, so I know you're kind of like still figuring out what you're doing. What's your new album like content wise? What are the songs? What can we expect to hear?
Yeah, man. So it's actually it's 11 songs. It's called Swords. Um, every song starts with the letter S,
Nice.
and that's where swords comes from, like swords, S words. Um, and it's weird because it wasn't intentional originally. I'd written like half the record, and every single song started with the letter S. And then my drummer, as like a joke, was like, "You should call it Swords." It was originally going to be called Sideshow, and the record is actually very much influenced by like post-Trump America, and I feel like each song kind of deals with like a different facet of the culture right now. And I think the title "Swords" kind of like reflects how we weaponize these, like whether it's technology or ideology or I'm trying to think. I haven't I haven't done the polishing on this thesis behind the record
No,
because
but
it's
dude,
so
it's
fucking good.
but this is
Um,
like this is way more awesome than I thought it was gonna be with the name
cool, yeah,
Swords. I'm like, that swords are cool, and you're like, no, no, no. This is my cultural deconstruction of post-Trumpian. I'm like, this is fucking awesome.
yeah, man, and like so um, and it's just weird because it didn't start out like, okay, this is what I'm like. It just kind of became what it was and like revealed
Mm.
itself to me. I know that sounds
No,
odd, but
that's cool,
it
man. I
worked
get
really
it.
well. It's cool because the first song is called Sideshow, and it's just all about like how we kind of just like fell asleep at the sideshow and let the freaks take a hold of the show, and now they're like running things, and like um I feel like it's very much like a finger pointing song from the left point of view pointing at the right,
Mm.
and like the next song is all about like xenophobia and told from like the right's point of view and
I love
defending
it.
xenophobia, and it kind of like is showing these like opposite sides of the same coin, and both sides unwillingness to understand the other. And there's a lot of that through the record where it's like kind of the same story being told from different perspectives, and um, I don't know.
Dude, I mean, I'm really glad I asked this question, and I'm glad that I kind of, talked a little bit about what's going on culturally because that's awesome, man. There's too much of this us versus them paradigm, which I get. Like when your Nazis are the them, you can consider yourself the us. But like most of the
Right.
time, it's not as simple as that. And I mean, you're fortunate, and I'm probably unfortunate in some ways, to live in places where the general view, like, dude, all of my friends, for the most part, the vast majority, I've lived outside in the suburbs of DC. I went to college in Boston. I lived in New York City for a long time, and now I'm in New York. Like, it's all East Coast liberals, and they're shocked every time some horrible thing happens or something passes or Kavanaugh is confirmed. I'm like, listen, you're not in touch with enough people outside of like your little filter bubble. Like, so
Right.
I think when you get that perspective from being kind of embedded in it, but also being sensitive to kind of other viewpoints and perspectives, like you clearly are, like, dude, that's a powerful sword to wield. No pun intended, like, or pun totally intended,
Yeah.
actually. I mean, but like, that's really fucking cool, man. I'm really excited for it. Do you have a tentative release date, 2019 or something?
I'm thinking late March, maybe early April. I think is sounding about right. It's almost so it's interesting because this is the first record where I've had a band. Like my last record I put out in 2015, and I recorded and performed every instrument. The drums are all like MIDI drums and stuff.
Awesome.
And I actually formed the band because of that record, because like the songs didn't make sense playing. Like I was doing them acoustic for a little while, but they just didn't. They felt like totally different songs.
Yeah.
So I put together my band, and it's funny because we didn't ever go like into a studio and record as a band. I still did the record the exact same way I did the last one, but my drummer is actually much more like skilled. I feel like I kind of have a good natural instinctive ear for mixing and recording or whatever, but like I don't have like the the technical understanding of like how sound works and like audio fundamentals and all that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I'll record everything and mix it to the best of my ability. Then I'll send him the project file, and then he'll retrack the drums and mix it. And so like where we're at right now, like the album is 100% written, and I've recorded everything, and now it's all in his hands to like mix. And then we're also like going into a studio and like adding horns and like more production
Cool.
type stuff. But it's like I think we have like 6 of 11 songs done,
Oh, awesome.
and the rest isn't far off. It's just a matter of getting like a good. I actually have like the 4 what I think will probably be like the singles from the record totally finished. And I'll send you a link when we're done chatting so you can check those
Yeah,
out.
man. I was gonna say, well, please do, and like any help you need, any assistance in terms of getting the word out, please let me know. I'll use all my networks to the fullest of my abilities because, like, one of the cool things about having this podcast and having some attention is that I get to highlight people who are doing really fucking cool things, and you're definitely one of them. That's awesome. You have a whole band now that you're kind of recording with too, and gonna be horns, man. If you're adding horns, the shit's gonna be good.
Thank you. Yeah, man, it's fun.
That's really cool, man. Let me ask you one last kind of vein of questions. Have you done
Yeah.
any psychedelics?
I actually have not. I saw that you that's kind of like a common thread through your stuff. I'm sorry
It is.
report that I haven't. Yeah.
No, that's okay. Do you
A
anticipate
lot
it?
of people ask me if I have.
Well, it's interesting because, like, listen, there's multiple types of creative people. Like, on one end of the spectrum, you have like the Mick Jaggers and the fucking Jimi Hendrixes who are just delving into like, Dionysian levels of drug use. And then on the other end, you have like Frank Zappa, who is not only not done drugs, was like
Right.
very anti-drug. Like, he
Yeah.
wouldn't allow people to do it. He collaborated with Captain Beefheart, but still, he basically was very strict about it. And like, people don't realize that you don't need to be doing psychedelics or any other substances to be a creative person and cool. Do you ever have any interest in doing psychedelics?
Not really. I just kind of feel like I've missed the boat. Like the time has passed.
Oh,
Like I don't.
you'd be surprised.
That's the thing. I'm sure I would enjoy it probably too much, and that's kind of my thinking. In like,
Yeah, I mean, it's not. I wouldn't put it in like the heroin. Like, don't do heroin because you're gonna like it too much.
Right? No, I totally get, and I don't have any
Bias against them.
against anyone doing it all. Like,
of course not.
It's weird, man. I feel like it kind of maybe comes from like a prideful place. It's actually kind of embarrassing and lame in that like in high school this is so dumb. But
no, now I have to hear it.
Pretty young in like middle school, I smoked some weed and my parents found out and they got really upset. And I just felt I didn't like how like disappointing. I know that's such a but like I took pride in like I don't need that stuff like and like being in high school, being like the one dude who was like very creative, but also was like one of the dudes who wasn't experimenting with drugs a lot. And like for some reason, I just never really grew out of that. And now I'm at a place where I realize like that was like a prideful thing that didn't really make a lot of sense. But I don't really have any big reason to.
Yeah, man. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think that's cool, dude. I really do. I don't think that's corny at all, man. I think that's cool when you make a conscious decision to do it. I think when it's your decision, even if it's born from like, well, I didn't need it. That's cool, man. Like, not some people, they don't need it, but like, I think that's cool, dude. I really do.
Yeah,
I respect
I
that.
definitely think I hit the point. I mean, I think most logical people hit a point in their lives where they realize like, why do I believe in what I believe? Is it because I've been fed that this is what I'm supposed to believe versus like, what do I actually, you know what I mean? Like I definitely hit that point.
Yeah.
And I don't have any, like, I don't think like I play with so many musicians who are on psychedelics, like most of the shows, you know what I mean? Like, it's not like,
no, you have no, I get it, dude. You're listen, if you're playing the music that you're playing and there's puppets involved, the chances are there's going to be, some people who are going to be doing psychedelics. Yeah. I totally get it, man. I think that's fucking really cool, though.
Yeah,
I really do.
I feel like I heard enough times, like, and like I don't know if I already articulated this well, but like having enough people saying things like, how much drugs do you do to write the kind of music you're doing or put on the kind of show you do? Like, something about it felt good, like being like, none.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think that's really cool. I mean, like, the thing is if you don't need it and you're just kind of already plugged in to that, like, I think you hit the nail on the head. A lot of people, their first, mine certainly, I did acid when I was like 15, but that taught me when I was 15 to be a free thinker. You know what I mean? There was many
Right.
more stumbles on the path, but if you hit that point without any assistance, why would you need to? Like, you know, outside unless you had a specific interest, I think there's really no reason to modify what's going on. I think it's cool as shit, man. Like, you're just a naturally created person, which is awesome.
Thanks, dude.
All right, so I end with 3 questions and then one kind of open-ended question. This has been a lot of fun, man. It's getting a pleasure to kind of like get to know you and understand where you're coming from, man. So last questions. What's your favorite color?
Oh, wow. You know, man, that's another weird thing. And like I mentioned how I have a lot of musicians that like I get really, really into.
Yeah.
And then like they just kind of like hit a point where I'm like, I don't know if I like these guys as much.
Yeah, no, I get it, dude.
Like,
I get it.
Like I've been that way with colors. Like I feel like my favorite color, really long story short, I don't think I have one. But I think I tell people I have a different favorite color like every time someone asks.
What's your answer now?
I don't know, blue maybe, just because it's easy. I don't know. It's funny because like I was in this band Infinite Orange in high school, and orange was like my color.
Yeah, infinite of it.
Like, I don't know if it's my favorite color. Why do I tell people it's my favorite color? Maybe green or blue. I don't know. Maybe
okay,
blue.
All right. I love it. That's my actual favorite color. What's your favorite number?
11.
Cool. Why 11?
I was born in November.
Gotcha. What November? What?
29th.
Oh, happy almost birthday in 16 days.
Yeah, thanks, man. And 2 + 9 is 11.
Ooh, nice. 2 + 9. Why 2 + 9?
29.
Oh, right. Ooh.
Yeah,
a little gematria. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. I was born in 1990. Is that 1 + 9 + 1? That's 11, right?
Yeah.
Wait, no.
No, that's...
Yeah, I blew that.
That's 9 + 9 + 1, which is
right,
19. Well, it's 1 9. What is your favorite animal?
Oh, man. That's a good question, too. That's another one where I feel like I've kind of gone back and forth. When I was young, I really appreciated chimpanzees and ostriches. My wife and I just got our first pet. We have a kitten.
Oh.
And it is currently my favorite animal.
What's the kitten's name?
Loki.
Girl or boy?
It's a boy.
Love the name Loki. Trickster archetype. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. Cool.
So cool. So we'll go with kitten, Loki. So last question. What's a practical tip that you've learned in your life that you could share with people listening? It could be anything, mundane, sacred, anything at all.
Yeah, man. I think honestly, like the thing with let me think how to phrase this.
Yeah.
I guess we could go a couple different ways with it. But really that moment of that tweet, that song I tweeted at Tim and Vic, changed the trajectory, I mean, to this point of my life, like a total 180. And for the better. Like, and just taking those chances, like taking what may seem like a dumb, you know what I mean? Like a probability of there's a 1 in 1,000 chance that this could turn out to be something cool. Like do more of those things. I feel like a lot of people aren't doing them just because they think of odds, you know, like they're worried about like wasting their time or it might not coming out the way they want it to come out or the person not ever being able to see, you know what I mean? Like
totally.
I feel like I've had so many moments like that in my life and more often than not, they don't pan out the way you want them to. But like, I don't know, like if you have something that you feel like compelled to do, that you feel passionate about, that you don't see anyone else doing, that you think could have like, I don't know, some kind of effect in your life, like just go for it. Like it's the same thing with pursuing music with everything you've got. Like, yes. I think a lot of people like are worried about looking silly when people don't like take to it the way they want to or as soon as they want them to.
Right.
Like if you feel compelled to do something, like go for it. And on the flip side, even though I don't know how much overlapping these two things really have to do with each other, but like little things, helping other people. Like Tim retweeting that song, Vic putting that in his special, like set me up on a trajectory that like, you know what I mean? Like I want to be able to be in a position to pay that back to other people.
Yeah.
And I mean, I might not have the resources to do that in the same level they do, but like I, you know, am so appreciative that happened and I'm kind of indebted to them in a way for it.
Well, you know what's cool, man, is, and this I think carries through in a lot of the stuff we see from those guys, is like they're people. You know what I mean? Like they're actual people. They're normal people. They just happen to be nice and good people. So they do stuff like that. They're not looking to kind of appropriate or take or, you know, do something that's self-serving. Like they probably saw what I saw when you sent that to them, which is like you're a talented creative person who probably deserves wider exposure. So I mean, I think your practical tips are fucking awesome, dude. And I think more people, especially if you fancy yourself an artist, if it's something you can't not do, you got to put yourself out there. Like you have to. And I think weirdly, a lot of people who should be putting more of themselves out there have an overly critical kind of viewpoint on their own stuff. They see other people putting out stuff that maybe they don't think is that good, probably because it's not that good. Not everyone has that filter, but don't be too harshly critical with your stuff because also like maybe it's not good. Maybe you get better because you didn't get the results you want. So, dude, I love it. I love it. I love it. Nick, thanks so much for coming on, man. I'm glad to get to know you.
Thanks, man. Yeah, same. I really appreciate you asking me to come on.
Yeah, quickly before we go, let people know where they can find you and listen to your music.
Yeah, so my music is on Spotify and iTunes and all that good stuff. Twitter and Facebook are the two things that I update most frequently. Twitter is more like jokey kind of stuff, and then Facebook is more like what my band is doing. I'm trying to get a little more synergy between those two worlds.
Cool, man.
I'm thinking about starting a YouTube channel. Well, I have a YouTube channel with my music videos and like promotional stuff for like my original music. But now that like Super Deluxe is done, I want to have like a place where all my stuff can live. So I'm probably going to upload a lot of that to my YouTube channel, which is also Nick Lutsko. So Facebook.com/Nick Lutsko, Twitter.com/Nick Lutsko, Instagram, it's all the same stuff.
I love it. Awesome, man. Thanks so much for doing this, man. Have an awesome day.
Yeah, you too.
All right, peace. Thanks for listening to that episode. Go check out Nick, like I said, Spotify, all of the places that music is released. People know how to do that now. I did. If I figured out how to do it, assume that people like Nick have figured out to do it. Anywhere you're going to get music, go check it out. Tune into him. Listen, if you got stuff and you can use his talents, I am willing to predict this very confidently that Nick will have a successful career doing something in this vein because go check it out. You'll hear it. So go check him out. Go check this out. Check. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next week.